several times. All right, I'll start by reading the biographies provided by the candidates, starting with the Democrats. Randy Farkas is 54 years old, is employed by Sunoco Logistics as a senior technician. Randy is a graduate of Woodbridge High School and has completed coursework at Eastern New Mexico University and the College of New Jersey. Randy has served 2 terms as Milltown councilman from 2007 to 2009 and 2011 to the present. He is the chairman of the Utilities Committee as well as a member of the Finance Committee and Public Works Committees. Randy has been the liaison to the senior citizens for the past 3 years as well as during his previous term on council. Under his direction, there have been many improvements to the Senior Citizens Center. Randy has served on the Planning Board from 2005 to 2009 and 2011 to the present. Randy is a well-known volunteer in our borough, as evident by his dedication and hard work as chairman of the 4th of July Committee from 2004 to 2009. Since 2003, as the co-founder and as an integral part of the Haunted River Walk, he has helped raise over $100,000 for the 8th grade students of Joyce Kilmer School. Randy has served on the Mayor's Anti-Vandalism Task Force as well as a recreation coach for basketball and softball. In 2009, the United Way of Central New Jersey presented him with their Hometown Hero Award. Randy has lived in Milltown for 23 years and aspires to be a millbilly, although he acknowledges he has a few years to go. The other Democratic candidate, Joseph Piatanza, for 7 years, 2001 to 2008, Joe served on the Milltown Little League Board of Directors, holding key positions including president, vice president, and treasurer. During his tenure, Piatanza implemented and assisted in improvements to the baseball program, which included a website, a fall league, and the inclusion of girls softball to the program. He also helped to establish criteria to award annual scholarships for graduating 8th grade Joyce Kilmer students. Piatanza served as president of the Spotswood High School Touchdown Club from 2007 to 2009 and has volunteered as the webmaster for the Borough of Milltown's municipal website since 2010, extending the borough's communicating capabilities through Facebook and Nixle. Since being elected to council in 2011, Joe has chaired finance, planning, and administration for 1 year and public safety for 2 years. During the past 3 years, he has been at one time or another the council liaison for the Board of Health, Municipal Alliance, Cable TV Committee, Ford Avenue Redevelopment Agency, Office of Emergency Management, Milltown Fire Department, and Milltown Rescue Squad. He has also been a member of the Utility Committee, Public Works Committee, and Finance Committee during his tenure on council. Joe graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Management Science from Kean University and is currently the finance controller for Robertson Taylor, an international insurance brokerage and risk management firm specializing in music and live event coverage. Joe is also a certified baseball umpire and football official. Piatanza has lived in Milltown for 19 years with his wife of 30 years, Barbara, son Anthony, and daughter Gabrielle. Now turning to the Republican candidates. Ron Dixon is a retired law enforcement officer where he spent 30 years with the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office as a lieutenant investigator and 8 years as a police officer in Edison. Ron has worked in various investigative capacities with the United States government while employed with the County Prosecutor's Office. Ron was assigned to the U.S. Justice Department Drug Enforcement Agency and worked with them for 15 years. His assignments included, but were not limited to, narcotics, smuggling, gang violence, organized crime, and firearms. In 1988, Ron was elected president of the National Drug Enforcement Officers Association, Inc., and there he served 3 terms. Ron has served on council from 2009 to 2011. While previously on council, Ron served as the chair for the Public Works, the Environmental, Health and Social Services Department, and the Parks and Recreation Department. Ron served on the Milltown Municipal Alliance, where he worked to promote the DARE program and created the June Fishing Derby to promote Get Hooked on Fishing, Not Drugs campaign. Ron is a certified DARE instructor and was the Middlesex County DARE coordinator for the 45 Middlesex County DARE officers. Ron has served as post commander for the American Legion, Joyce Kilmer Post 25 in Milltown from 2005 to present. His work at the American Legion has helped veterans and their families. Ron currently volunteers as a member of the Office of Emergency Management for both Middlesex County and the Borough of Milltown. Ron was recently selected as the 2014 recipient of the Community Award of Excellence by the East Brunswick Charitable Foundation. Ron has 4 grown children and 7 grandchildren. He lives on John F. Kennedy Drive and has lived in Milltown for 9 years. Jerry Guthline has been a licensed funeral director for 39 years and is owner of Bronson and Guthline Funeral Home in Milltown. Jerry has an associate degree in mortuary science from the State University of New York at Farmingdale. Besides having a successful business in Milltown, Jerry also has a long history of being very involved with different organizations and committees in town. He was a volunteer fireman with the Milltown Fire Department and also was a volunteer emergency medical technician for the Milltown Rescue Squad. Jerry is a 17-year member of the Milltown 4th of July Committee and proudly starts the 5K run and parade with his signal cannon. He is a member of the Milltown Lions Club and the Knights of Columbus, the Chamber of Commerce, and 6 years ago began the very first Milltown Groundhog Day celebration in town, and is the proud caregiver of Milltown Mel, the official groundhog of Milltown. Jerry volunteers at Ronald McDonald House and New Jersey Sharing Network. He is a parishioner of Our Lady of Lourdes Church, Roman Catholic Church. Through his business, Jerry has offered assistance and monetary support to our local schools, Parkview, JFK, and Spotswood Junior High. He is also known for large air-filled balloons he places outside his home on Main Street for various holidays, along with the seasonally decorated bronze statue man, fondly referred to as Harry. Jerry feels that his 40 years of business experience in planning and making difficult business decisions would be a benefit to the council and the residents of Milltown. Working and living in town makes Jerry available to the residents night and day. Jerry married his high school sweetheart, Kathy, and they've been married for 39 years. They have 3 grown children, Catherine, Teresa, and James, and are blessed to have 6 grandchildren, Harrison, Madison, Samantha, Vincent, Jason, and Sean. Jerry has been a resident of Milltown since 1997. Welcome to all the candidates, and very much, I'm sure, your willingness to serve is greatly appreciated. At this point, we'll go into the opening comments from each candidate. From the flip of the coin, we will start with Mr. Farkas on the Democratic side.
Thank you, Dave. 5 years ago, many of you watching this forum were in attendance at the American Legion building as you voiced your anger, your frustration, and your dissatisfaction with the prior administration for failing you in a time of crisis. We had experienced a significant rain event. The substation was flooded, and there was no power. The substation controls and circuit breakers were underwater. Some pumps throughout the town were not operational. Flooding was widespread, and there was limited information available to you. We were, literally, in the dark. In the next elections, you, the voters, voted for change. Change came swiftly as Councilman Piatanza brought the Nixle communication system to Milltown, and 4,000 of you signed up, never to be left in the dark again. I worked to find a way to acquire a parcel of land that we could use to swap with the county to move the substation to higher ground, a task that I was told would never happen. As you know, we had to have a location for the substation before we could build a new one. After going through the tax maps and the multiple listing service for properties for sale, my analysis indicated that the Schwendeman property met the requirements necessary to effectuate a land swap, and brought my idea to the mayor and borough engineer. We met with the county several times, met with Senator Smith, met with representatives of the state to ensure that the property met all requirements. With a lot of help from many people, we purchased the Schwendeman property and successfully swapped it with the county for the parcel of land that the substation will now sit. What you might not know is that we negotiated with the county to give the Schwendeman property back to Milltown. To sum it up, we purchased the Schwendeman property, swapped it for a new parcel on higher ground, and then received the Schwendeman property back from the county for virtually no cost to the taxpayers of Milltown. This is working hard for the residents of Milltown. I bring this to your attention because once again, we are at a crossroads. Joe Piatanza and I have worked hard to gain the momentum for the progress that you see today. We have proven that we can accomplish what you asked us and what we promised to do. It would be detrimental to the borough, as well as you, the taxpayers, to stop that progress and take steps backwards. Inexperience and the lack of commitment are the enemies of progress. We have done a lot, but there's a lot more to do. Our town is safer because we have aggressively gone after grants for speed signs, solar-powered pedestrian crossings, and have beautified South Street at little expense to our residents. We are better prepared to handle emergencies because of our commitment to improving our frail infrastructure, improving communication, and investing in the improvements and upgrades to our utilities to better serve you, the ratepayers and residents of Milltown. We are proud to have restored your faith in elected officials by doing what we promised, making Milltown a better community for all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. Most people who hear I'm running for council congratulate me or thank me for the willingness to serve. Others, mostly my friends, ask why in the world would you want to be on council? Do you need that aggravation? It's not the exact words they used, but that's the sentiment they asked. My answer would be, I want to be a councilman because the Borough Council matters to our borough's quality of life and its future. I'm running because I believe that with my skills, knowledge, and experience, I can promote Milltown's quality of life and I can help the council become more effective in doing its job to the benefit of all residents. The council performs three crucial functions: representation, legislation, and oversight. If it fails to fill these roles adequately, Milltown loses, as does every resident. Council member must remember that he is there to represent the residents' interests at all Borough Hall opportunities. He is not an ambassador from the Borough Hall to the residents. Being retired, I am able and willing to serve our residents on a full-time basis, and I am available anytime for residents' questions, concerns, or comments. Council enacts rules which affect the quality of life in our neighborhoods. A council member needs to have a grasp on the complexities of the law and an awareness of the risks and potential rewards of a change. A bad decision can undermine years of hard work and thousands of taxpayer dollars. I'm not a person who will sit on the sidelines and watch things happen. I get involved. As you have heard during the reading of my bio, I have a 38-year career in law enforcement. I have dedicated my life to people and public service. It's what I believe in and what I know. I'm able to think outside the box, willing to consider creative solutions to reach a win-win outcome for all concerned. Keeping a watchful eye over borough operations and the projects currently underway throughout the borough is critical if we want an efficient government. To do its job, the council needs clear, complete information about expenditures and outcomes. To fulfill its oversight responsibilities, council needs the independent resources and freedom of action to research issues and to evaluate the information it receives from the administration. From time to time, exercising effective oversight means having to say no if the plans are wrong for Milltown or its residents. I am not a career politician, and I owe no one for my career advancements. I am well educated and strong in my convictions. I believe my integrity and my many life experiences will allow me to efficiently address this difficult financial problems and community needs now facing our town. We need council people who are forward-thinking and action-orientated, who reach out to the entire community trying to bring in more voices than just the familiar ones present at council meetings. We are clear-eyed about public safety challenges, who bring a mindset of public service and not a political agenda. I am confident in my ability to serve and my many neighbors and friends, the people of Milltown. And thank you.
Mr. Piatanza.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for affording me this opportunity to share my thoughts with regard to my candidacy for the Milltown Borough Council. I believe that I have demonstrated over the past 3 years that I possess the dedication and fortitude to work for improvements which have positively affected our community and have improved the quality of life for our residents. In addition, I have shown that I am willing to make the hard choices, accepting that they will not always be popular, but will be made after listening to different perspectives. Whether in my professional life or during my many years of volunteerism, I have worked hard at making improvements. Given the opportunity, there is no doubt I will continue to do the same for the Borough of Milltown. The improvements implemented by my colleagues on council and I thus far can be seen all over the borough, Whether it is the new substation, new borough garage, our mobile message boards, we have accomplished many things we can be proud of. I am a team player, results-oriented, and very demanding of myself. Phrases such as, "that's the way we've always done it," indeed no longer apply. In fact, my colleagues and I have changed everything from the borough employment application to the way you can cross the street, and so much more. I am not a politician. I am a resident, husband, father, friend, relative, and volunteer. And the only agenda I have is to fight. Fight for my family and for yours. Fight for equitable tax and utility rates. Fight for services and communication we deserve, expect, and have now provided. Fight for grant funding opportunities from county and state officials and make an effort to offset taxes, which we have done. Fight to make Milltown the best it can be. My wife and I chose to move to Milltown 19 years ago because this is where we wanted to raise our family. We tell our children that they should choose issues that are important to them and take ownership of their responsibility to make it better. That is what I do, and hope that Milltown will again give me the honor and opportunity to serve to the best of my ability. I believe Milltown is a very special place. It possesses old American charm and still has many traits from a bygone era. If we can incorporate those qualities with the improvements and betterments that we have put in place, Milltown can become a jewel. On November 4th, please help me and my running mate, Councilman Randy Farkas, to help you and your families. On November 4th, vote the Democratic ticket in Milltown. Please remember this. You will always have my ear, and I will always have your back. We promised, we delivered, and we will again because there is so much more to do. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Guthlein.
Thank you. For all the people that made this evening possible, thank you. It's good to be here. As a newcomer to politics, I wonder what I could say tonight for my opening remarks. Then I thought of something that happened recently that I thought I could share with you. My mother's 90 years old. She's still quite a feisty girl. She's got a great sense of humor. I call her every day to see how she's doing. We talk about family, the events of the day. When I told her I was going to run for political office, she said to me, "You know, 90% of politicians give the other 10% a bad name." It was a funny line, so I asked her where she heard it, but she couldn't remember. Later I found out it was a quote from Henry Kissinger. She went on and she asked, "Why are you running for office? Why are you doing that?" I thought for a moment that explained that after years, and actually decades, of running out to calls for the fire department or the rescue squad, it just became too difficult physically to do that kind of work for me anymore, at least to do it safely. But I still want to be active. I still want to do what I can do for our town. That's my reason for running. I may no longer be able to crawl into a burning building or carry someone on a stretcher down a flight of stairs, but I can certainly put 30 years of experience in this as a small business owner to good use. I have no political motives other than a desire to do my part for our town, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you to all the candidates. We'll turn now to some questions from a media representative. I guess a new media representative would be kind of how I'd put it these days. Rob Ricassi from tapinto.net will now have time for 3 or 4 questions or so.
David, thank you. Welcome to all the candidates, and congratulations for taking the step on taking another run. It's good to see you all. I'm a 26-year resident of an adjoining town, so I've had a really good length of time in being able to observe Milltown and watch Milltown change over the last couple of decades at least, and it really has changed in a lot of ways. But I'm reminded of the fact that Milltown really does still have that old town charm, and with that, however, comes some old town problems. And one of the biggest is dealing with an aging infrastructure. And a lot of my questions are geared from conversations I've had with many Milltown residents in my role with Tap Into Milltown. And the residents have generally always expressed concerns moving forward about growth and also their taxes and protecting their financial security in the town and keeping that old town charm at the same time. So my questions are going to be geared a little bit towards that. And the first one is a pretty basic one. With an aging infrastructure and the work maybe that's been done, but the fact that there's still a lot more to be done, how do you balance the need to have that infrastructure get redeveloped while at the same time protecting the tax base and the ability for residents to maintain their ability to live here at that same budget level without their taxes going through the roof?
I should have said before I let you start that we're going to alternate the answers with both sides, that everyone will have an opportunity to answer each question. And so on this one, we'll start with the Republicans with Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, sir. I agree wholeheartedly with you as far as the aging infrastructure in this town. It is a major problem. When I was on council last time, one of the things we looked at and we corrected was the pump station, the Washington Street pump station outside. By taking the steps to improve that and to change the way that it operated, we've saved the borough immediately $100,000. When those bonds are paid off in another 5 or 6 years, that $100,000 savings will be going up to $200,000. And it's innovative ideas like that and looking at things like that that have to be maintained in this town. Currently, it's not a secret, everyone knows that we've moved forward with the electrical substation. Current council has done what they had to do. We started it when I was on council, and unfortunately a storm came in and it flooded us out, and we realized then that things had to be done.
Okay, turning to the Democrats, Mr. Farkas.
Sure. The most important factor in the infrastructure is the substation. The substation is not only important for the residents, for their quality of life, but for their reliability for electric service and power distribution. But the electric utility is the economic engine that runs this town. Whether we like it or not, the surplus from the electric is what carries over and keeps our tax base stable. So an improvement into that infrastructure goes a long way across the board to make sure that our taxes stay stable. There are other projects that we are doing. We're doing relining the water lines, cement lining the water lines to kind of clear up some of the water quality issues that we've been experiencing, because again, some of the water lines in town are over 100 years old, and we're doing that at a cost that will save taxpayers dollars down the road, because those lines won't have to be replaced. We'll get a few more years on them.
Mr. Guffline.
Thank you. We do need to work on our infrastructure, but I think we need to do it in a measured, metered way. We have to do some preventive maintenance. We seem to be governing by crisis. We wait until our substation is underwater. Right now we have the Elk Station, the Elkins Lane pump house has 3 pumps. That's what brings us our fresh water. 1 works. That should be fixed. Brooks and Riva Avenue, the sewer pump, has 2 pumps. 1 works. We've had a sewage leak in this town before. We were fined heavily. So drive down JFK Drive or Borough Road. Look at the cross arms on the telephone poles. You can see through them. We need to have preventative maintenance. Should be budgeted and should be completed. We can have our substation up and running. If you can't get through the wires, it's no help to us.
Mr. Piatanza.
Yes. Infrastructure is paramount, and we have addressed that. We recently put together a water lining program for the JFK Drive area. We've addressed other parts of the town that also need that kind of attention. I believe off, I think it's Garden Place off Oaks Drive. We're addressing that as well. So Rome wasn't built in a day. However, after the time that these things were neglected, we have picked it up, and we are doing things that are going to enhance people's property values. And thank you.
Next question.
To that end, I'd be interested in general from all four candidates as to their opinions on the benefits or maybe the detriments on shared services. There are certain things that I think where shared services really would assist the smaller communities around, and Milltown probably be one of them, but it also, to me, strikes as a risk of giving up some independence along the way. So I'd be interested on all four candidates what their views are on shared services and how they feel that utilizing them might help in that realm.
And we'll start with the Democrats on this, and Mr. Farkas.
Sure. We do a lot of shared services, and some examples are dispatching. We have a shared service. Through the schools, our education system, there are quite a few shared services with Spotswood and some of the neighboring towns. And another one that just comes to mind is animal control. So we look very closely, and let me just say, we're always looking for a shared service. Any way that we can save money, we are, I mean, if you could go through the budget, you can look through and see how many shared services that we participate in.
Mr. Guffling.
Thank you. Shared services, if they'll save us money, is a great idea, but I wouldn't want to affect the quality of life. If you're talking about police officers, things like that, we have a response time of about 2 minutes in this town with police, which is fantastic. If we had to wait for someone to come from another town from further away, 10 minutes makes a big difference. I've been involved with shared services, with emergency services, with the fire department. I've been to North Brunswick, East Brunswick, South River for mutual aid. Same thing with the EMS. If it saves us money and it doesn't affect the residents of the town, great idea.
Mr. Piatanza.
Yes, thank you. Shared services is something we always investigate, and where it can fit, we absolutely look into it. However, we as a borough do not want to lose our identity in the process. So you're walking a fine line with committing to a shared service and giving away some control of the town. So where we can do it, we will and we do, but it's a slow process, and you do have to be careful. Thank you.
And Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, sir. We've looked at shared services both when I was on the council and prior to getting on council, and a lot of times it just didn't work. We were looking to consolidate some garbage pickup with neighboring towns. We felt that our personnel would be out of town for too long of a period of time and would not be beneficial to the people in town. So we never followed through with that. We never did that. Other shared services we've looked at, some have worked. We're doing recycling with the county. We signed a new contract with the county that saved the borough $70,000 a year with the new contract. And when you can go into partnership like that and shared services, it benefits all the residents of the town. Thank you, sir.
Next question.
Councilman Farkas raised the issue about the electric utility, and I'm going to use that as an example. In this borough, if you ask 5 people an opinion on the electric utility and whether the borough should keep ownership of it, you'll get a minimum of 6 opinions. There are probably a number of different services. I use that word in a very, very generic term. And again, I'm using the electric utility itself as one example of that. How do you maintain consistency around trying to determine the right approach for the borough in a circumstance like that, where there's such a difference of opinion and such a dichotomy of views on how to do this? Some people feel give it back to PSE&G. Some people feel the borough should own it. Some people feel you should privatize it with somebody else entirely. It seems that if you would ever put that out to a vote, it's not even as simple as just yes or no. How do you approach this? What is your view on how circumstances dictate how you get through something like that?
And we'll start with the Republicans on this one. Mr. Guffline.
Thank you. Difficult question to answer. I believe the way that system is currently is a benefit financially to the town. I also think our response time from our utility work is excellent. This is something I wouldn't want to change. So personally, I would leave it just the way it is.
Mr. Piatanza.
Yes, thank you. It's funny you should say that, and I'll tell you why. Councilman Farkas and I are, before we were even elected, we're on the electric subcommittee. And we had a gentleman on the committee who wanted to sell it. He wanted to sell it in the worst way, and he was adamant about it. By the time we had a few meetings, he understood that we tried to sell it, and we couldn't sell it, and if you know what we know, you don't want to sell it. Because, like Councilman Farkas said before, it's a very important part of Milltown. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, sir. It's time for a little bit more transparency with the people in town. What you said before, you're 100% correct with. Many people have come up to me and say, why don't we just sell it? Why don't we get rid of it? We explored that option. Public service didn't want it. It was too much of a burden for them. And if we sell the electric, we immediately lose approximately $2 million in the current fund between revenue and salary offset and electric costs that are now borne by the utility. Because we have our own electric, the borough doesn't pay electric for this building. It's generated by itself. The fire department, many other senior center, that's all not generated. That's all taken care of. If we sell it, the result will be a tax increase of approximately $700 per household in this borough, and that's a household assessed at $165,000. Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Farkas.
Yes, thank you. Again, I just want to reiterate that the electric utility is the financial engine that runs this town. I know a lot of people don't understand that or care not to understand that, but the reality is that without the electric utility, our town would go basically bankrupt. I think one of my opponents made a comment about transparency. As Mr. Piatanza said, we are both members of the Electrical Substation Committee, original members. As part of that process of being on that committee, I was on the subcommittee that was tasked with trying to find out if some entity would take over control of our electric utility. No one was interested in doing that, which was ultimately public service. Those meetings are open to the public. Any resident in this borough is welcome to come to any electric substation meeting. So it is basically wide open, transparent. Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
I was going to ask about the changing demographics in the town, but I think I've got something that I'd like to dwell on instead. We talked a little earlier about the small town USA feel that Milltown still has and strives for. And yet, in the midst of all of that, we now have Target, we now have Staples, we now have a couple of other big box stores in town. And although the vacancy rate may not be as high as some of the other areas around here, there is still some. How do you balance encouraging small businesses to still want to come into Milltown and invest in Milltown as a business and not also, for lack of a better expression, sell out to the big box stores that might make it easier to capture that big fish, if you will, and maybe make it a little easier from a ratables perspective and take some of the pressure off?
Okay, we'll start with the Democrats. Mr. Piatanza.
Good question. It's a problem that exists throughout the country, not just Milltown or New Jersey. I mean, you have Home Depot who comes in and takes away Milltown hardware. we encourage small business. We try to be a friend to small business. We have been embraced small business wherever we can. However, when a Home Depot comes in, there's only so much you can do. Again, we have different businesses. I think an artist business opened up recently. You have your bakery, you have your funeral homes, you have businesses like that. But we do what we can to encourage small business to come to Milltown and to stay in Milltown. Thank you.
And Mr. Guthline.
Thanks. One thing we have to say about the bigger stores is they do hire a lot of people and they pay a lot of taxes. So there's benefit to that as well. I don't know where else you could put anything giant like that in Milltown. We're only so big. We seem to have developed a bunch of small specialty shops that have worked out well. Some have lasted, some haven't. Businesses that are going to make it find their own way, and hopefully they'll find their way to Milltown.
Mr. Farkas.
Yes, thank you. Milltown has a good mix of commercial and mom-and-pop shops. As you alluded to, that's a direct reflection on our tax base. 25 municipalities in Middlesex County. Milltown is the statistic middle of the county. Our tax rate is $2.40 per $1,000 of assessed value. There are some towns that are as high as $3, and there are some towns that are as low. Actually, Dunedin is about $3, and Cranberry is $1.89. So those towns have separate issues, not the same issues as Milltown, but again, with a good mix of business, of large commercial box stores and small mom and pop stores, it just makes for a better town, a better all-around town, and it's certainly a positive effect on the tax base.
And Mr. Dixon.
Well, I believe that the residents of town have to be more local business friendly, and we have to keep the business in mind that they're here to make money, not just to serve the people of town. In doing so, look at the electric rate, a demand rate which is almost twice as high as any home in town, and we pass that on to the businesses. Maybe with this new substation coming in, the power it's going to generate, we can put out some savings to the businesses in town to keep them here and to help them make a bigger profit staying. Thank you.
And we're now finished with media questions. Thanks very much for your questions. And we'll turn now to audience questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, audience members were given the opportunity to write down questions, which were then given to me. I have basically put them in a random order, and we'll start working through them. We'll get as far as we can until time runs out, at which point we'll move to closing statements. So the first question will go to the Republicans, and it is, in your opinion, what are the top two issues Milltown will be facing in the next 3 years? So Mr. Guthline.
We've already touched on infrastructure. That's one of the issues we need to address. But in the next few years, I think probably the biggest issue we're going to face is Ford Avenue. Whatever happens at Ford Avenue, it's going to change Milltown forever. So I'm not sure if the two parties that are involved, Mr. Borough, Mr. Berger, can come to an agreement. But if they can't, I'd like to see the Milltown voters get a chance to see what happens to that property.
Mr. Farkas.
Apparently, Mr. Guthline and I have the same notes, because infrastructure and Ford Avenue are my belief that those are the two most important issues facing this town. Although I would just like to point out infrastructure, the Church Street pump station, sewer, forced sewer main, and the gravity portion are things that we are going to have to address in the near future. And I would rather be proactive in that than have a leak and mercy of some emergency contract. But Ford Avenue, unfortunately, the prior administration lost control of that site. The voters of Milltown will not have any say what happens at the Ford Avenue. The Ford Avenue decision will be made by a judge, and we will be stuck with that decision, although we are negotiating to try to work a deal as best we can that will lessen the impact to the residents of Milltown.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, sir. Well, I agree. Ford Avenue is one of the major concerns that the borough faces right now. The one thing that I'm vehemently opposed to at Ford Avenue is hundreds of rental units. Rental units are going to take our school system down. We don't even have the property to build a bigger school. We have to maintain what we have with the infrastructure systems. And Ford Avenue, owner-occupied dwellings are the only way to go, in my opinion. This way they'll be maintained, they'll be taken care of. You get rentals in there, people from all over. You don't know how they're going to take care of it and what it's going to bring into this town. But hundreds of units bring in hundreds of people, and if each one has one child, that's hundreds of children that we don't have room for right now.
Mr. Piatanza.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I can talk about Ford Avenue and infrastructure also. I can also talk about getting the new substation up and running and operational and fully functional to the best of its ability. I can talk about moving the Borough garage to the new site on Washington Avenue, get that up and running, get all our assets out of harm's way. As far as Ford Avenue, it's in the courts. The courts are going to decide what's going to happen. But I will tell you, as a councilman and a member of the Ford Avenue Redevelopment Agency, Milltown has abided by everything the court has requested, and that is all we can do. That's as much control as we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How would you address the needs of the current firehouse with new construction or maintaining the two current firehouses? And rather than just limiting you to a yes or no on this, just describe how you think the situation should be addressed. And that'll start with the Democrats and Mr. Farkas.
Sure. I think the way to go there is to maintain not two firehouses, but one firehouse. Days of the wooden bridge that crossed the town is gone. We don't need two firehouses anymore. We need one firehouse that meets the current needs of our fire volunteers. I do recognize that there are some things that need to be done. We just got a grant from FEMA for about $74,000 to do some repairs on that firehouse, and at any time we can certainly look at providing showers or any of the other things that are required to make that old firehouse a little bit more functional. But there are many other important things that need to be done before we investigate spending millions of dollars on a firehouse.
Mr. Gufflin.
Thanks. I've been a fireman, or I began as a fireman when I was 22 years old. Things have certainly changed in fire service. Fire trucks are bigger. They're mandated by law. There's certain things that you have to do these days. That said, in time, we are going to have to get another firehouse, but right now it's not the moment. We just spent $14 million on a substation. We just can't afford it. We need to do what we can with the firehouses we have, make them as best as we possibly can for the safety of the firemen that operate out of them, and work from there. Down the road, a firehouse will have to be considered. I can't say when.
Mr. Piatanza.
Thank you. As Councilman Farkas said, we did get a FEMA grant for the rehabilitation of the current structure to bring it back to its original luster, and it needs it. As far as any other improvements, we are looking at trying to improve the situation with the Milltown Fire Department in one department on Main Street, and that process is ongoing. Actually, I'm involved with that, and like Mr. Guffline said, there are other priorities that we must take care of first. But yes, eventually we will need to improve the fire department. Thank you.
And Mr. Dixon.
Again, I agree with my other individual here, Jerry Guthline, what he said. We do need a firehouse. Now is not the time. The firehouse is owned by the borough. It's another part of the infrastructure, and we have to maintain the infrastructure. You can't let things go to where it's beyond repair and then start saying we're going to keep it and fix it up. You have to maintain what you have. And that does not go for the fire department, it goes for many things in this town. Councilman Farkas said the water lines, lining the water lines, that's all important. We have to take care of the people. He's talking about along JFK Drive. That's not that old of a section as other parts of this town that also have to be done. Again, the infrastructure is the important thing, and that's something we have to look at through grants. There's many, many ways to fund some of these jobs other than through the borough taxpayers.
Okay. Next question. How would you improve communication to residents in Milltown? And this will start with Mr. Guthline and the Republicans.
Well, I think actually the Nixle has worked out very well, and I'm glad that was instituted. I know we do email blasts now. That's another way to get through. Other than that, I have to investigate it and figure out different ways. But I think what we're doing right now is pretty good.
Mr. Piatanza.
Thank you. My colleagues and I brought Nixle to Milltown, and we've grown the base to 4,000 subscribers, which for a municipality of 7,000 is something I think everybody's proud of. So between that, the Milltown website, Facebook, plus we can utilize a county vehicle that we can call in, and they could do something, send out a message for us in particular certain areas. But I think we've done well. You can always do better, and we will. Thank you.
And Mr. Dixon.
I think the Nixle system worked out very well. I use it. I get notifications all the time. But I also know that as part of the American Legion, we sponsored a young lady who was going to Douglas College, and she came down and gave a presentation, and she's right. Not everyone in this town has the capability of receiving Nixle, and we have to worry about our seniors who may not have that capability. Therefore, she had sign-up sheets where we'll get through on your telephone if we can, if we have to come to your door. And a lot of the seniors did sign up for it. So Nixle's not the only answer. It's a very good answer, but there's many other avenues too. Thank you.
And Mr. Farkas.
Thank you. Again, I'd just like to extend my thanks to Councilman Piatanza for bringing the Nixle to Milltown. That is, of course, the most effective way to reach the majority of the residents who have signed up, over 4,000. One thing that wasn't mentioned was the acquisition by a grant of signage boards throughout the town. That would have come in extremely handy in Hurricane Sandy, but unfortunately we did not have them. There is also the county notification system that you can sign up for, that you have the ability to get on your telephone, on your cell phone, or on your computer. So there's a lot of ways in 2014 to get communication if you want it.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and this will start with Mr. Piatanza and the Democrats. Regarding the water scandal in New Brunswick, how do you feel the borough responded to the needs and concerns of the residents? Do you feel the press helped with the information?
We responded as soon as we found out. We checked with the appropriate people, did what we were instructed to do, checked with our own employees who go over and above the checks and balances of New Brunswick. So do I feel we did a good job in handling it? Yes, I do. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
My only comment on the water issue from New Brunswick is a question. Why did it take a year for us to notify our residents? We get 2013 reports in 2013 reports in 2014. The borough may have been notified earlier, but there was no effort on Nixle or anything else to notify them that there was a problem with the water. It took a year for everybody to notify it. By then the problem was already corrected per New Brunswick. What about that time when it wasn't corrected?
Mr. Farkas.
Yes, as the chairman of the utility department, I could tell you emphatically that there were never any issues with the water in Milltown. We made that very clear. As a matter of fact, I had a public meeting right here in this room, invited the whole town to come A few people came, and I brought the people from New Brunswick and our engineers and our W4 and C4 licensed engineer. There were no issues, never any issues. Unfortunately, the way reports work, when you want a yearly report, in 2014, you get the 2013 results. But the results always show the same thing. There are no issues. So I don't know who wants to try to cast dispersions that there are problems with the water in Milltown, but there are no waters in Milltown. The water in Milltown is maintained by the EPA and the DEP. There are not any issues.
Mr. Guffline.
I believe that the issue might have been false reporting, and I think we really dropped the ball on that. I think we need more timely reports more than once a year.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe or agree with the council's decision to prohibit tagging in town? Please explain your reasons in your response. And that will start with Mr. Dixon.
I appeared before that council meeting, and I disagree with the tagging ordinance as it sits. Present at that meeting were members of the Knights of Columbus, the American Legion Ladies Auxiliary, the 4th of July Committee, all of which benefit this town. The American Legion Ladies Auxiliary benefit veterans. They solicit money for their poppies for a short period of time. I believe it's during the month of April. They usually only went up by Home Depot and not even on the streets of town. That tagging ordinance came around because certain people had relatives coming in, whether from Rutgers, Penn State, or wherever, and they were tagging in town, and there was some problems with these people in town. My idea, and we presented it that night at the council, we have insurance. We'll provide insurance forms, hold the town liable-free, and go to any training that they want. The Knights of Columbus agreed with this, and the 4th of July Committee agreed with that.
Mr. Farkas.
Thank you. To the best of my recollection, no one has been hurt since that ordinance was passed. That ordinance was a common sense ordinance that got people out of the streets and into safety. There were issues with children. There were issues with people stopping traffic, jumping in front of cars. It's a common sense ordinance. Maybe some of the organizations were a little bit more responsible, but unfortunately the law says you can't exclude certain people and allow something for other people. So as a common sense ordinance across the board, that the tagging in the streets was banned. That doesn't mean that you can't tag at a local store, at Acme, at A&P, at Home Depot, Staples, anywhere else, but it just requires a little bit more effort. Expend the effort and you can go collect at those places.
Mr. Dixon.
I believe it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, it is Mr. Guffline. I'm sorry.
You can call
it again.
No, I got my numbers mixed up. It has to happen once. Mr. Guffline.
Thanks. For some groups, tagging was really an important part of their funding. I think Randy and I tagged together for the 4th of July when he was on the committee. I think with proper training, proof of insurance, and maybe with some supervision from the police department, it might be revisited and we might take a look at that again.
I think I've got this one right, Mr. Piatanza.
Thank you. When that ordinance was passed, it was for safety. And there are creative ways to tag, still on the road, but on the sidewalk. There are tosses. There are other ways. There was no. We didn't want to hurt any organization by that ordinance, but we wanted to keep everyone safe. In today's world, and this is not just Milltown, you go to any town in Middlesex County or even New Jersey, most do not allow tagging in the street any longer, and in today's world, with the texting while driving, I think it's a good ordinance, and I'm proud of it. Thank you.
And we have time for one more question, so I'll apologize in advance to those of you who wrote questions that didn't come up in my random sorting. The final question, we'll start with the Democrats. Mr. Farkas, is if elected, what is your role in a state of emergency?
In a state of emergency, the councilman, you are responsible. Well, certainly I'm responsible for the utility department. I can tell you that as we have these excessive rainfalls, I spend all my time either sitting in the post office parking lot watching the water rise, and then hopefully it doesn't come too high, and then kind of swinging over to the substation to make sure our preparation is the emergencies in Milltown are, it's like a ballet. There are a lot of moving parts. I'm very proud of all the people that really contribute to keeping the residents safe. But again, in my role as utility chairman, I look after the utilities to make sure the substation is safe, which I'm confident that it will be, and to make sure that the water and sewer is as good as it can be.
Mr. Guthline.
Thanks. I'm not on the council, so I don't have a responsibility yet. But in the past, what I've done when there was emergencies, I can tell you I plowed out the fire department at 2 o'clock in the morning and the rescue squad with my truck. I can tell you my garages were emptied, so we can put everything from the rescue squad into my garage so it didn't go underwater. As councilman, I'll do whatever it takes.
Mr. Piatanza.
Thank you. As the chairman of public safety, obviously my role is to maintain safety throughout the town. In addition to that, I have been the volunteer webmaster since 2010, and actually Nixle is an extension of that. So I am big with communicating the situation to the residents via website, via Nixle, and via Facebook. Thank you.
And Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. By my bio that you heard earlier, I'm on the Milltown Emergency Management. I'm on the County Emergency Management. I respond when things happen, and not only when they happen, prior to them happening. An example would be when Sandy was coming into town, myself and other people present in this room sandbagged the first aid squad, the Legion, and other buildings in town. Luckily, Sandy wasn't another Irene for us, but we were ready that time, and we did what we had to do prior. During Irene, when the town did flood, I was here 24/7. I worked with the police department, I worked with the first aid squad, I worked with the fire department, and what we needed to do, we did. Again, being a 38-year law enforcement officer, I may have had more insight than most of the other people as to what was going to happen and how to handle it, but we did it.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you again to the audience for your questions. We'll now take a 5-minute break so the candidates can prepare their closing statements. Okay, I understand we may have had a little bit of technical difficulty at the very beginning, so I was asked to reintroduce myself for those of you who are wondering who's sitting up here. I'm Dave Redlosk. I am faculty at Rutgers University and at the Eagleton Institute of Politics. I just got the time sign over there. And I run the Rutgers Eagleton poll at the Eagleton Institute, a statewide poll on public policy and politics in New Jersey. So thanks again to the audience. Thanks again to the candidates. We'll now move on to our closing statements, starting with Jerry Guthline.
Very well. Again, for all the people that made this evening possible, thank you. I also want to thank my 3 fellow candidates for taking part in tonight's forum. At this last Milltown Day celebration, I was talking to a friend who was actually an elected official here in town. He told me that government is a beautiful thing when it works well, and it takes good people with honest discussion and compromise to make that happen. I could not agree more. As someone new to the political arena, I like to see a lot less politics and more good government. I'm confident I can work with people from both sides of the political aisle to do what's best for our town. On November 4th, we will be voting and choosing people who have a part in running our town's government. I don't think any election should be won because of the size of somebody's political sign or for having a snappy political slogan. And I really don't think someone should be elected for taking singular credit for the hard work of many good people. All council members, regardless of party, need to work together, period. On election day, I would hope you would ask yourself a simple question. Who do you trust? Who do you trust not to vote for their party, but for Milltown? Who do you trust to be a good steward of your tax dollars and maybe not spend money to favor votes? Who do you trust to do what's best for your family, for all Milltown families? Now, obviously, there's no magic wand, and I certainly don't profess to have all the answers. The only thing I can promise each and every person in Milltown is that I will work hard and do what's best for our hometown. On November 4th, I ask that you offer me the chance to earn your trust and vote for me and Ron Dixon. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Closing statement from Joe Piatanza.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dave. 908-705-1178. J. Piatanza at milltownborough.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I am again giving you my contact information. Please call or email, and I will always get back to you. And if I don't answer right away, I will. For those of you who have reached out to me over the past 3 years, you know that I not only call you back, I have knocked on your doors and met with you because I wanted to see and understand what it was that you were experiencing. That is what a public servant does, and that is what I will continue to do if given the opportunity. I get asked all the time why I want to continue to serve. I reply by saying that I serve for 2 reasons. First, I enjoy helping people. Second, I enjoy making Milltown a better place. That is the gratification for me. It also stems from my youth. From the mid-1960s to the mid-1970s, my family and I lived in Deer Park, New York. There I attended John F. Kennedy Middle School. Near the front door in the vestibule was a large portrait of President Kennedy. That portrait always moved me, and I felt as though that he was expecting us to carry out the ideals of public service. And that feeling has never left me. In less than 3 weeks, you will decide who you will entrust the course of the borough's future to. I hope you consider me and my running mate for that task. Here's why. We have both short-term and long-term plans for Milltown. We are proactive and not only reactive. We have the ideas, energy, and work ethic to implement those ideas and the legislative contacts to help make those ideas a reality. In addition, we realize what Milltown's priorities are and seek the input of all interested residents to ensure that we take our town down the right path. We have demonstrated in every area that we are about planning, action, and communication. In many ways, this campaign is about just that, the tale of 2 storms. During Irene, with our predecessors at the helm, there was little planning, little action, and no communication. The very next year for Sandy, with myself and my colleagues at the wheel, you had planning, action, and communication to a degree never seen before and in very difficult conditions. I am extremely proud of that. My colleagues and I have made Nixle a household word in Milltown. It is no longer a luxury, but a necessity, as we have now over 4,000 subscribers. Moving the electric substation and the Borough Garage to higher ground, making Milltown safer, and addressing our infrastructure issues are just some of what we have accomplished. But there is more to be done. This process is a humbling one. You have to convince people to trust you. You must demonstrate that you are a better choice than your opponents. I have tried to convey just that. On November 4th, you will again decide if I was successful. I kindly thank you for your attention, your consideration, and as I said earlier, you will always have my ear, and I will always have your back. Please consider me, Councilman Joseph Piatanza, and my running mate, Councilman Randy Farkas, this election day. We did promise, we did deliver, and we will again with your vote. God bless.
Closing statement from Ron Dixon.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I want to thank all for hosting this candidates forum and thank all of the individuals who are here in the audience. They showed their interest in hearing the candidates' views. Many of you in Milltown know me through my affiliation with the American Legion and know that I am someone you can trust. I have helped many organizations in town and always put the needs of the community first and foremost. I will bring this same passion and conviction to the council. As I've stated, I'm not a career politician. I have no political agenda. I just want to do what's right for our town. I will stand up for Milltown and stand up for your interests because your interests are my interests, the betterment of this town. I want to play an active role in meeting our town's obligation to its residents and in solving our tough issues. With my past experience on council, I know what it takes to do the job, and I have the qualifications necessary. I've always said you don't complain about the problem unless you're part of the solution, and I want to be part of the solution. Being retired and a senior, I know the issues that many of our residents are facing, and I will address these issues and concerns. Those of you who know me know that I'm available day and night for residents' questions, concerns, or comments. I'm almost positive that everyone in town has my cell phone number already because I've been called by everyone in this town at some point or another for something. Thanks again for taking time to listen to the candidates, all of them. And I ask you for your vote, and I vote for my running mate, Jerry Guthline, on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. And the closing statement from Randy Farkas.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out it seems that our opponents are experiencing sign envy. Closing, I would like to thank Russ Einbinder and the Cable Television Committee for presenting this informative candidates forum to the public. I'd also like to thank our moderator, Dave Retlusk, taking the time out of his busy schedule and being here tonight. The actual work has begun this morning on our new substation. We are anticipating substantial completion by May of next year, which would have us up and running prior to the next hurricane season, which has always been my goal. I can't emphasize enough how important this new electrical substation will be to our community. It will not only be a state-of-the-art facility that will provide reliable power distribution for many years to come, it will also have a positive impact on all of our property values. This is a result of leadership, dedication, and the proactive long-range planning that you should expect from your elected officials. There's no substitute for experience. Popular people don't necessarily make good elected officials. You have only to look back at the last few elections and look at the failures that we as a borough have experienced to validate that statement. If your power went out for more than a week 5 years ago and your basement was flooded, or in the case of the people that live in the lower floors of the mill, your entire home was flooded, then you understand frustration. Frustration because there was no system in place to provide information. There was no contingency plan in place to keep the existing substation up and running. As original members of the electrical substation, Joe Piatanza and I have worked to make sure you won't be frustrated again. With the assistance of the Electrical Substation Committee, we have implemented fail-safe measures in the existing substation that will prevent the catastrophe of 2009. Joe Piatanza has proven his leadership by putting the Nixle communication in place, and so far, 4,000 of you have signed up because you know the frustration of being kept in the dark. I have worked hard trying to first acquire the property needed for a new substation, then go through the permitting process at the county level, attending many meetings and hearings. Once that was accomplished, attended State House Commission meetings in Trenton for the approval we were granted. Finally, countless meetings with our borough engineer and architect to provide a state-of-the-art facility that will not look like an industrial power plant. Instead, it will reflect the existing architecture and be a facility that we can all be proud of, while keeping costs as low as possible. I think it's obvious that we have our priorities straight, although it wasn't too long ago that the prior administration's priorities were to spend $500,000 on plans for a firehouse, then not let you, the taxpayers, have a voice on whether to spend an additional $6 million of your tax dollars on that firehouse. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a lack of leadership and indicative of not having your priorities in place. On Election Day, re-elect Joe Piatanza and Randy Farkas for Borough Council. Together, we will continue to improve Milltown now and in the future. Thank you.
And thank you to all the candidates, both for being here tonight and for their willingness to serve the citizens of Milltown. We get a lot of focus on national politics all the time, but it's what happens at the local level that really affects people's lives on a day-to-day basis. So thank you again to all four of the candidates, and thank you to the audience for coming out and for your questions, and to those of you watching. This will run multiple times between now and Election Day on November 4th. It'll also be available on livestream.com, and just get out there and vote on November 4th.
Go, Randy.
Absolutely. Happy to.